Welcome into the Beat Sessions, your place for all things music. I'm your host, Mitchell Weary. Let's talk about Lord Huron and their record, The Cosmic Selector, Volume 1. They released that on July 18th. This is the fifth studio album for Ben Schneider and company, and their follow-up to 2021's critically acclaimed Long Lost, which is a gorgeous record, and I think made all the more delightful by the fact that it cemented this band as an established force in the realm of indie rock and roll. I think that Lord Huron is a band that continues to get better with every record, and Long Lost demonstrates that they simply aren't just a second-tier band amongst contemporaries like the Shins, Fleet Foxes, My Morning Jacket, and Grizzly Bear, just to name a few. I think that their reverb-soaked, desert-painted Americana style shows a constant evolution of sound through their catalog. And The Cosmic Selector Volume 1 is an album that builds gorgeously off of that template while also exploring uncharted territory. Along with co-producer Matthew Neighbor, Ben takes his signature indie folk and country sound into a landscape that's tinged with the classic sounds of loungy jazz and pop, something very new for this band. All of this enriched by lush and intoxicating string arrangements that I feel are inspired by the mystic sounds of Eastern music. There's lots of vibrant horns at play as well. I think that this is an element that has become a signature part of their sound, but on this record, it feels like more often than not that they're tapping into the stylings of retro soul and R&B versus the Spanish and I guess kind of spaghetti Western inspired workings on Long Lost. I think another big highlight on this record is the layers of guitar that work throughout it. There's always a lot going on, but it never overwhelms the listener. I think that this is a major factor in what has made their music so successful, and I think it's what makes the Cosmic Selector so evocative. I reside in Arizona, and I feel like the sound of this album just brilliantly captures the enchantment of a warm desert night. If you've ever been down here, the full moon just serving as an estuary to the soul, stirring all the regret and ennui in all of our hearts into this tempest of contemplation, but with the goal of extricating our spirits and finding promise in the rising sun that ushers us into the great unknown. It's this album that reflects on the past, but is about finding new beginnings. And it's not just the music that's captivating either on this thing. I think that Ben has never been one to shy away from a good concept. And I might argue that thematically, this album is more experimental than anything they've ever done before in that regard. The concept focuses on the Cosmic Selector, which is the jukebox that's featured on the front cover of the album. And it serves as a spiritual Sherpa into the unknown that comes from reflecting on the past. This album, it opens with the warm, soft sound of groove echo. I love that familiarity of that noise. It's almost as if like the jukebox was pulling the first 45 of the evening in a series of selections made by a group of friends that are getting ready to gather around and reminisce over a few rounds. I think at the heart of each track, selection is the notion of the itch that's just impossible not to scratch from time to time. That the selections that we make in our own lives cement our fate. And the enticement that we often feel to just take a jackhammer to that and to ponder all of the things that we potentially left behind. We all know that it's in vain in some regard to do this, that our actions can't be undone, but I'd also say that it does serve as a means to make better decisions moving forward, to learn from your mistakes. I think it is important to do from time to time. I will admit that while it's a fun concept, it does make for a somewhat disjointed record. I think the album doesn't seem to really find a solid point of flow, and while it does reflect what it sounds like to sit in a dimly lit dive bar as different personalities play their favorite songs, it doesn't quite translate into the continuity that one finds on their previous efforts or that just one finds in a solid album in general. I think in many ways, this record comes together kind of like a compilation album, for better or for worse. It opens up with the track Looking Back. The song is going to start with that signature sound of the groove echo, then leads right into this light strum of acoustic guitar and a soft little gong with immediate vocals from Ben and soft driving bass drum. There's lots of reverb in the vocals and this harp-like quality of the arpeggiated guitar that gives this track this smoldering delicacy, with the assistance from some string textures that have this very distinct quivering sound. I love the opening line, with a little bit of money, I'll get gone, and I won't be found. With a little bit of luck, I'll find the place where I can stay forever. These are lines that mark the hope of a new beginning, but the context in which they're often uttered, I think, because it's probably not the first time you've heard something like this, I think it's one of despair and longing. And I think it's a brilliant moment that captures immediately what this record is all about. The hook, "Spent my whole life looking back and wondering who I was," perfectly summarizes, I think, what their music has explored in general over the years. There's a brief moment after the 2-minute mark where the percussion drops and the formless nature of this song just becomes intoxicating. I really love this moment on the track. That percussion works back in to return the drive. And this thing is just a haunting tale of regret that finishes with a coda that returns to that ambient formlessness with some of that gong texture and groove echo, kind of creating that concept and leading right into your second track, Bag of Bones. Love this song. Picks up the energy with a thick, groovy bass lick and a bit of punch. Droning synths create this foreboding mood with light, steely guitar lead finishing the intro on this one. The riff has this great desert rock feel, along with a bit of that outlaw edge that they're so good at capturing. I think it really gets to the essence of what feeling lost in the sky on a warm summer night feels like when you're out here in the Great West. The riff drops with Ben's vocals as he starts a reflective first-person narrative, and then the vocals trade off with that lead riff that returns to usher in a chorus that has gently soaring vocals and brighter melodies. There's killer harmonica that hits towards the end of this track. Kind of felt like Neil Young for a little bit. And I wish there was a bit more of that throughout this song and the record, but I love just like when it ushers in this moment of just like big momentum to finish this track. Your third song is entitled Nothing I Need, shifts abruptly to this delicate arpeggiated acoustic riff with a big folk rock influence. A big shift from the brooding mood of the first two tracks, I'll say. And continues with this soft percussion that keeps the tempo up, steely guitar that softly crashes in and out of this thing as it works. The chorus goes to work with a bit more indie rock energy, with a great hook in the line, "I got everything I want, and I got nothing that I need." Lots of texture continues to build as the song works towards a steely guitar solo that goes to work around the 2-minute and 15-second mark. It's crisp and punchy, but still has the right amount of country dust. And then the line, "You're the one I'll never get, and you're the one thing that I need," leads into a reprise of that signature acoustic lick, and it just bows out with a few more catchy lines that work around that hook that I just quoted there. Your fourth track is entitled Is There Anybody Out There? It's kind of hard not to think of Pink Floyd with that title, but this thing kicks off with more groove echo and flickering synths that have this melancholy shimmer. Got a soft electric percussion and simple bass that carry a minimal track that shifts the tempo in the opposite direction once more, with the feel of this kind of like, this pensive late night that leads to watching the sun come up, whether you're in the desert or not. I think we've all done that. But there is this ethereal desert guitar that works intermittently, and there's a burst of energy with the hook playing off the title, marked by droning synths that sound like Eastern string arrangements. I think it is actually the strings that are at work there. Nice twinkly arpeggiated electric guitar as well. Just a fun little drum roll is going to usher in a solo assisted by minimal mellow rhythm. And then the track's elements slowly work back as the rhythm picks up and then reverts to the minimal with the start of the next verse. The song continues with kind of like a back and forth, but finishes with that big energy, and particularly in the drums. And then to end, there is a brief, quiet coda. Your fifth track is entitled Who Laughs Last featuring Kristen Stewart. Yes, that Kristen Stewart. Another big shift in energy on this one, as this thing comes out with like kind of like a grinding post-punk style guitar and driving percussion. There's a prominent bass lick with like this thick fuzzy tone that comes into play, and followed by some hand claps that kind of work in as a percussive element, and all of this to enhance the energy. Really dig that bass line. But then it falls out, and Miss Stewart goes to work with this spoken word narrative. I think she's actually pretty good on this song. She drops a number of lines before the bass works back in, and then the song hits a chorus where the bass adopts a much more subdued tone. I love that shift in the instrumentation there. It's also complemented by shimmering strings and breezy acoustic rhythm. And then it works back into that punk feel for Kristen's second segment. Call it verse, call it what you will on this thing. And then a little after the 2-minute mark, the music gets really rocking with Ben taking the baton with big vocal melodies on this. Kristen is going to re-enter right before the 3-minute mark with one more go in the spoken word element. And then Ben takes the song right up to the finish line. And then Kristen actually finishes it with the line, "Who laughs last? Who laughs last?" Your 6th track is entitled "The Comedian." Opens with soothing character, a bit of jazz and classic pop and R&B, especially with the play on the ride cymbal. Percussion's big on this one. There's some finger snaps that play over light droning synths that sound a bit like an alarm. And then the drums pick up with what sounds like woodwind instruments. Wouldn't be surprised if they were actual clarinets and flutes and etc. And then strings as well, leading back into the verse. Then they back off with the track honing in on that pop feel with bass, guitar, and drums. The song works back and forth between these two sections with a solo hitting around the minute and 30-second mark for a bit. And then the song returns with piano that grabs the listener. I really love this element of the track, working into another solo about a minute afterwards. The track works into a breakdown and then finishes with beautiful horns and then those quivering Eastern strings that I'm just so in love with on this record. Your 7th track is entitled "Watch Me Go," switching to a little bit of like classic rock and rockabilly energy with this one. There are elements of country, heartland rock, and also a little bit of punk rock as well. There's a prominent lead riff that works along with some pedal steel as this one moves from start to finish. Vocals are big, and I really like the double tracking that's featured there throughout this one as well. It's a pretty straightforward rocker, but I dig the tempo and the energy of this track. Coda fades into warped texture that transitions directly in to your 8th song, "Fire Eternal," featuring Kazu Makino. Kicks off with a little snare roll and features lots of steely guitar that has this oceanic quality to it. The instrumentation twinkles over a thick bass lick that just sort of kind of saunters along in this track. And the lead guitar takes the reins in boosting the energy of the bridge into the second verse. I like that transition there. And that's going to feature a little bit of staccato piano. And then Kazu here provides excellent harmonies in the chorus with that lead riff bridging once again into a verse where she takes the lead and back in also is going to do the harmonies as well on that. I love that the piano is still doing its thing as this song progresses. The track jams out to close with the instrumentation fading out as vocalized harmonies from Kazu take over on this one to finish. Your 9th track is entitled "It All Comes Back." Somber piano and vocal open this thing up. The piano sounds a bit like a clavinet almost, giving the track some soul feeling. Strings swell with a bit of rhythm for a brief moment before reverting to minimal territory. And moments later, it hits back with this beautiful swell of classic pop and jazz instrumentation. The track keeps moving through these peaks and valleys as additional textures find their way into the more explosive moments of this song. The strings that build in towards the end are lush and gorgeous, definitely a nice feature. And I think that they're very well complemented by these subdued horns that are working as well. And I love the way that the retro soul feel carries through this particular track. Your 10th song is entitled "Used to Know." You got this unique arpeggiated riff with Eastern-inspired tone that opens things up, ushering in a breezy acoustic rhythm and a gentle groove. The rhythm section is going to take over with Ben to start the first verse, with guitars rejoining the party after a few bars. The chorus hits with stronger guitars and also with this icy droning synth and a solid hook. If I ever get back, kind of keeps working with that line and playing off of it. The opening riff serves as a bridge into the second verse that incorporates some hand claps and a little more arpeggiated guitar. Little drum roll opens a middle eight that captures more of kind of like a desert rock flair in a contrasting moment on this track. Coda builds momentum around the hook for a great finish, and you get a little more of that groove echo, kind of keeping that concept alive. And leading into your penultimate track, number 11 is called Digging Up the Past. Great title for a penultimate track considering what is at the core of this record. Almost could serve as a closer. It fades in on droning synths, simple electric rhythm, and a mellow tempo in the drums. It's dream pop with like a little bit of country flair, I'd argue. The pedal steel and harmonica that hit to bridge the verses are so freaking good on this thing as well. You get this sorrowful, steely texture that continues to develop as the song progresses through each verse. It's somewhat brief, but it's effective in being so direct, I'd argue. There's this celestial swell that finishes the song out and transitions into your 12th track, Life is Strange. Yeah, it really is. A very chill track layered with loads of acoustic and electric guitars. It kind of feels like country doo-wop a little bit. The verse begins with just the rhythm section as the guitar elements slowly build back in. And then the chorus finds a funky little groove with great drum play. The melodies begin to gain momentum behind swelling strings. And I love the shift to sort of like classic pop-driven rock with a bit of jazz influence. The doo-wop influence on this thing becomes more pronounced with a staccato-style electric riff that follows. I really love that element working into this track. And the song finishes with, well, do what you must. In the end, we all turn to dust. And I'll stay forever right here if you want me to. And a jam that slowly fades into this sort of kind of like cosmic vacuum. It's a great way to end the record. There's moments, again, where ultimately I feel like it does feel very disjointed. I feel in the middle there's kind of a bit of a lull, 49-minute runtime roughly. Feel like maybe could have been trimmed somewhere as far as one of these tracks. But overall, I think the concept is really cool. I think it does make for an enjoyable experience that doesn't quite measure up to some of the work that they've done in the past, but I think that's what makes this such a worthwhile listen to, is that with this record, I think they're taking risks and leaps that maybe they necessarily haven't quite been willing to do in the past. And I love when bands do that. I think from time to time, you just kind of have to throw it out there, see what sticks. And I think for the most part, this album really, really does stick. I think it's a captivating effort that is worth all of your time, especially if you are a fan of this band. And, you know, if you're brand new to these guys, I think that this could serve as a really fun entry point into diving back into their catalog and checking out some of those other records that I think ultimately are better efforts as far as the cohesiveness and just the way they come together from start to finish. I'm going to give this thing a 7.6 out of 10, and really just like some of the unique, kind of interesting elements that they're working in, especially like the loungy sort of like pop and jazz feel. And again, those Eastern style string arrangements that work throughout this thing, I think are just absolutely gorgeous and beautiful, and add a very unique element to this record. But hope you guys enjoyed this project. Hope you find this review helpful. Please like this video, share it, subscribe to the channel. Feel free to drop a little super gift if you'd like to help me out as well. Do all the things to help me blow this project up in 2025. Stay tuned throughout the week for more album reviews. We'll see you next time on the Beat Sessions.